Welcome to Midwest Mind Meld with your hosts, Josh and Jason.
What's up, Josh?
Not much, Jason. How's it going, brother?
Not too bad, man. Been a while since we've been in the studio. I'm kind of happy to be back. 100%, man. It's been, I don't know, it was too long, man. It really was.
Yeah, but it feels good to be back.
Yeah, man. How was the honeymoon?
Honeymoon was pretty good. We gotta tell you, man, it really put a change in the life of my climate.
Oh, yeah? How's that?
Brings me to today's subject.
Yeah?
I want to talk about climate change.
Absolutely, man. It's been a huge topic trending right now. I don't know if you saw the video. There was a video floating around. I saw it on Facebook today. Kind of made me laugh, actually. Kind of gave me my morning chuckle for the day. So AOC was doing a press conference somewhere. It wasn't really a press conference. It was just like a gathering of people. And there was this lady that stood up and was talking to her about how she's so dead set on climate change and how everything is like she feels like agrees with her so much on it. And she's like, we have to start eating babies because there's too many people in the world and we're putting out too much CO2. Bro, she literally said we need to start eating babies.
Well, hey, murder's always a good option, right?
I just don't know, man. Where do you really go with this?
I think that is actually a good place to start in the mindset of some of these people that are just dead set on climate change and wanting to act right now. We need to do stuff. Like, I wouldn't put it past them. I think you really would see them with a fork and knife eating babies.
I don't know, man. That seems a little extreme for me.
No, it's very extreme.
But I mean, it just I'm like, that's what I woke up to. I was like, bro, I can't even deal with what's going on right now at all. But anyways, so what is it about climate change that's fueling America right now, and not even America, just the world? Like, what do you think it is?
I think it's just the notion of wanting to be part of something bigger than yourself. Like, this gives people a purpose. It also gives them like kind of this righteousness to condemn other people. Like, you need to clean up your act because you're making this world a worse place. It's almost like the self-righteous. It's almost like a religion.
Okay.
You hear me say this a lot about social movements, but I think climate change is like the ultimate social religion because it's all for it's given this utopia idea that we can control and make the world a better place because people in the past have made it just this big giant shithole. And so it's our responsibility to come together, put politics aside, and fight for this cause.
Okay, so I don't necessarily agree with that or disagree with that. I mean, I think that as a country, we definitely could make things better. Not just as a country, but as a planet in general. I definitely think we could reduce the amount of waste we have, the amount of and not that reusable or renewable energy is not so far like gone that we can't use it and that the concept's not right. I mean, I believe that it's 100% where we need to go.
Yeah, it's not totally ridiculous of an idea. It's more the way of how it's talked about that I think is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, 100%. But the thing the one thing that when we started talking about climate change and sitting down and doing this episode, I started thinking about going back in time. Joe Rogan did an episode with somebody. I forgot who it was. I listened to it about 6 months ago, but he talks about ice ages and in the effect that it has on the world and things like that. And so when I thought about climate change, I thought about, okay, I'm gonna go back in history and kind of look at some big events that played out throughout history that really just show us that climate change is absolutely inevitable and that it's absolutely important to the survival of human beings. It's not going to kill us. It's actually going to help us survive. And the first thing I can think of is going back way before anything superficial was Pangea. If you don't know what Pangea is to our followers, Pangea is it was a supercontinent during the Paleozoic era and early Mesozoic eras, which of course was during the dinosaurs. Now, Pangea was a supercontinent that during the early Mesozoic era started to split up. And that's where we get our 7 continents today, was now that it's split up into those 7 continents. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a display for you guys to see, but if you look up Pangea, the way that scientists interpret this in their research is that Pangea was very heavy with vegetation. It was a very green continent. So looking at that 4 billion years ago, looking at now where the Middle East is a desert. We have parts of the United States that are a desert. And then you have like the Amazon. Okay, several different climates. Okay, climate change had to have occurred at some point to make those areas that specific environment. So that in itself tells me that climate change is absolutely inevitable. It's going to happen. And then we're going to jump ahead and talk about the Ice Age. Okay. We as human beings are very familiar with the biggest ice age, the one that the movies were based about, whatever. But that ice age occurred, several million years ago. Right. It's what killed off the woolly mammoths. It's when after that ice age was when the Neanderthals and the human beings really started to be predominant species on land. Well, the thing is there's actually 5 known ice ages in the history of the world. And these are the 5 most known. There's been several smaller scale ones, but these are the 5 most known. I don't have the names, but the last one was as soon as 50,000 years ago. Okay, yeah, that sounds like a long time, but it's really not. When you put it into how old the Earth is, 50,000 years is nothing. And so it really surprised me. But what surprised me more was that there's recorded events, more than a dozen known eras of glacial expansion in the history of the world. So it tells me that yes, right now they're saying that the polar ice caps are melting. They're not wrong. The Earth's orbit to the sun may have changed a little bit. So yeah, we're probably orbiting a little closer to the sun. We might be a little warmer. But there's nothing that says that those ice caps are not gonna reestablish themselves, because it's been done before, obviously. And this is just history. Now we're gonna move up to something a little more closer to our time. The 1930s. What was the 1930s what was it known for? The biggest thing?
The Dust Bowl.
The Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, but more or less the Dust Bowl. For those people who don't know what the Dust Bowl is, from Nebraska all the way south to northern Texas, it was an extreme drought. You know what a drought is? Obviously, no water, right? Where do we get our water? From the sky. So what happened was, and it wasn't just now. Let me specify this. It wasn't just climate change that created the Dust Bowl. There was a lot of other factors that played into it. But one of the biggest key factors in that, and that was reported as of the USGS, which is the United States Geological Survey. If you don't know what that is, you can find it on their website, usgs.com. It was changes in regional weather. So obviously our weather is determined by regions. I mean, where I grew up in Arizona, we don't get rain. Like, it's very rare that we get that much rain. So, like here in Nebraska, we get a fair amount of rain. It poured right before we shot this episode, like 100%. It like lightning, thunder, everything. So, during the Dust Bowl in the 1930s, there hadn't been rain for several years. And what happened is the farmers tilled all the land, thinking that the soil might be moist underneath and be plantable. That's not what happened. So they call it the Dust. It gets the name the Dust Bowl because what it did was the high winds. If you've ever been to Nebraska, you understand that the wind is really high here. The Midwest is very well known for their wind. But one of the things that's where it got its nickname was it created massive dust storms that actually ended up killing livestock and actually killed people too. But that was a huge example of climate change. Because, like, in the Midwest is known for getting rain. We're known for getting snow. But let's move just a little bit closer. What happened this past March?
We got a flood.
Why did it flood? So for those of you who weren't tracking, Nebraska, actually Iowa, and parts of Missouri actually suffered extreme flooding in early March.
Some of them still are, actually.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Some of them are still dealing with this. As you know, Texas actually flooded 2 weekends ago? I was in Miami.
Something like that.
Yeah. So, but going back to what happened earlier this year, we had so much snow fall, and then literally within days, it rained and it all melted. While northwestern Nebraska actually had huge chunks of ice that actually broke apart and actually destroyed the Spencer Dam.
Yeah.
It destroyed the Spencer Dam along that controlled the Niobrara River, and that the drastic change. We can even go to this week for that matter. Monday it was 90 degrees and Tuesday it was 55. So I mean, like, climate change is very, very real. But here's my opinion: to think that as human beings that we're gonna stop it is absolutely foolish.
Right.
We will never stop climate change. My opinion, and this is just mine, I feel like we could actually better spend our money trying to prepare for it and be ready for it than to try and stop it. Because stopping it, where it's going to be like beating a dead horse. We're not going to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Josh, but that's my opinion, honestly.
No, it's not a bad opinion. And just for our viewers, I do want to, I want to go back to the basics, and I want to define what climate change is. So climate change, just a dictionary definition of it, is changes of new weather patterns in Earth's climate system. And these new patterns stay in place for a few decades to millions of years. So that shows you kind of what a wide range of climate change can play into. And when it comes to the climate system, there's 5 parts to it. There's the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the cryosphere, the biosphere, and the lithosphere. And if you don't know what any of those spheres are, you need to go look them up.
Mm-hmm.
Educate yourself.
Do you know where they can find this stuff? I mean, Google obviously, but is there like a really good website, or just Google it?
Just Google it. There's several good sources. I mean, these aren't really things that are debated about. These are things that are universally accepted by the science community. So you can find them on several different platforms and websites. Because if it's bullshit, believe me, it'll be called out right away.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be up for very long. But yeah, climate change is obviously a very natural phenomenon, and it happens a lot. Way more than we think, way more than we're taught that it happens throughout history. What's going on today is the political aspect of it. We have a lot of politicians and we have a lot of activists that are trying to make this a very political cause. And so when you're talking about climate change, they're talking about global warming, how human beings play into this climate change. They're saying that they may agree that climate change happens naturally, whether we have any part in it or not. But what they're focusing on is, human beings' CO2 emissions, or the nitrous oxide that we put out into the atmosphere.
Well, weren't they going off a couple years ago about methane that cows were producing?
Right.
Also contributing to that. As well?
AOC is still going off about that and about cow farts.
I know, like you can't really control that. I mean, what are you gonna do with it?
Well,
now, if we could, not to interrupt you, but if we could capture that and use it, we'd be in a lot better place.
Right, and it's just, I don't know, it's just ridiculous to me because they're focusing on a very small part of climate change. They're just saying, the greenhouse effect. You've heard of this?
Yeah.
They're saying, these greenhouse gases, used from fossil fuels and the CO2 emissions, it's creating this kind of greenhouse effect, and we're keeping heat in the world. Well, I mean, by that logic, that makes me think that the world's going to get hotter everywhere. Isn't that what that speaks to you as? As the world's going to get hotter everywhere if we're trapping all the heat in the atmosphere?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
But it's not getting hotter. I mean, this last winter was pretty chilly.
Oh man, yeah, we were down. We hit -30 at one time. At one point,
something like that.
It was ridiculous, man. It was miserable. So I mean, you got a good point, man. Wow. Yeah, I do think it would get hotter everywhere, but we're definitely not experiencing that here in the Midwest. I mean.
No. But you see, it just seems like every time one of these floods happen, like what you were talking about back in March, I mean, that was a very devastating thing. We haven't seen a flood like that since the 60s, I believe, or the 50s, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it kind of shut the whole town down, and we weren't the only town affected.
No, we weren't.
But it's just like every single time one of these events happen, you have these politicians and you have these so-called scientists that come out and these activists that come out, and they start blaming it on, the climate change. See, we told you. Give us your money. Give us your loyalty so we can change this for you.
Yeah, it's not gonna change.
No, it's not gonna change.
We don't possess the power to change it.
These are things way out of your control.
Well, NASA also put a statement out saying that climate change is also somewhat related to the Earth's orbit to the sun, which I mentioned. So I mean, and that's science in itself. I mean, we talked about in our abortion episode about when you start messing with biology, and nature is a form of biology, is it not? We can't alter it. There's no way we can do it. I mean, do we have a footprint in what's occurring? Probably. Probably not as substantial as everybody wants us to think, but it is happening. Right. And realistically, yeah, we're not going to be able to do anything to stop it. And the greenhouse thing, I can kind of understand that. Why don't we could better allocate our resources to try and clear up that air than trying to stop it from happening. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Singapore. Singapore is very, very heavily polluted.
Mm-hmm.
Why have we not tried to figure out a way to clear the air? I mean, because obviously, if you've ever seen a city that has a lot of smog, it's literally right above the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't expand out. It doesn't get bigger. It just stays right about where it's at. So why have we not tried to figure out a way to isolate that town or that city and find a way to help filter that air back? I mean, we have small air purifiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we can put in our houses to help filter the bad particles out of air. Why can't we do that on a much bigger scale? Why can't we put some of that money that we're using to help try and stop it, to help try and fix it?
Well, that's what they're promising that they're going to do. And some people would say that the example you just gave about the smog above the city, that they already did that in Los Angeles. Because if you look at pictures of Los Angeles back in the 80s, I mean, it was nothing but smog. You could barely see the Hollywood Hills if you were looking across the city.
Yeah.
So people say that the Clean Air Act actually was responsible for not seeing smog anymore. I mean, you don't see near as much of it as you used to.
Yeah.
So this is a very small example of what politicians would take, and they'd say, well, look, see, we did this for Los Angeles. Why couldn't we do this for the world?
It's I don't know.
See, I mean, that's where it kind of stumps. I mean, see, there's an argument on the other side of this. You and me sit on one side.
Yeah.
But there is a good argument on the other side of why we need to do this.
No, I'm 100%, like, I agree that we need to figure out a way to take care of what's left of the planet that we have. But, I mean, it's kind of like this situation where we're constantly building new housing developments, new apartment buildings, things like that, because the population is growing, and it will continue to grow until we have another plague. Mm-hmm. And honestly, we kind of need one. That's just my opinion. I'm not crazy. I'm just saying, like, we might need one. But when I was in Miami 2 weeks ago, we were driving around, visiting family, things like that. And the one thing that probably surprised me the most out of everything was the amount of real estate that was still undeveloped, or the amount of buildings that were just unoccupied because they were run down. So instead of tearing these buildings down, rebuilding where there was already a building, we're tearing up new land, destroying our planet even more, instead of utilizing what we've already used.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it might cost a little more to do that, but imagine in 10 years down the road, if we just rebuild what we've already destroyed, the effect that it could have on us in the planet in itself.
Yeah, it would just do less damage to the Earth, at a slower pace. But it's just, I kind of want to move on, and I want to talk about some popular figures in this whole climate change, global warming phenomenon.
Okay.
Everybody knows Al Gore. You know anything about Al Gore and his part in this?
I honestly don't. My dad didn't like him, so we really didn't talk about it much in the house. But, I honestly don't know that much about him, to be honest.
Well, I mean, when it comes to, like, climate change and global warming, it's been talked about for a long time. And there's been predictions that have been made that have come and gone. People were predicting back in the 70s that the world was going to end in 30 years because of the human beings' part, producing fossil fuels and... not producing fossil fuels, but using fossil fuels,
mm-hmm.
and CO2 emissions from that. And, these predictions came and gone, and, people, figured that they were full of shit, but it was so long ago, nobody remembers. Anyway, so this was talked about for a long time, but in 2006, Al Gore came out with a movie, and I don't know if you remember this movie, but it was called An Inconvenient Truth.
Nope, never heard of it.
Never heard of it? Well, I remember hearing about it, but Al Gore, basically it's just a movie, and it's about global warming. So basically just to chop it up, and how human beings have just played this major role in global warming because of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, he literally took ideas out of the Unabomber's manifesto about how the Industrial Revolution has just been so evil to humanity, and because of the Industrial Revolution, we've been producing much more greenhouse gases and sending them into the atmosphere at a much higher rate than past generations, which is like a duh. Of course we have.
Right? But, that's not going to change.
But here's the funny thing about it. is in that movie there was a couple of things. The main thing was he tried making this correlation that hurricanes were caused by global warming, and this was famously refuted by scientists. Scientists were like, "No, that's complete bullshit. That's not true."
Mm-hmm.
And then just look at how Al Gore lives his life. I mean, he's a complete hypocrite. He's got a mansion that they say uses 21 times the amount of energy that a one household family would use on average. So this guy's just a complete hypocrite, and he's been a main figure in this movement. I don't know. You ever hear of any other figures?
What's the one what's the one they're using now? Greta
Thunberg.
Yeah,
that's how I say her name.
Yeah,
16-year-old Swedish girl, comes from a very privileged family.
Mm-hmm.
She rode a yacht from Europe to get here to the U.S. to...
Oh, a yacht.
Yeah, so she didn't have to use the carbon emissions from planes.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, she's saying that the adults of this generation have stolen her childhood.
Yeah, I saw that somewhere, and I was rather, curious as to what she meant by that. I don't know, man.
She's trying to pressure politicians. Well, and it's not just her.
So
it's the whole movement. They're using her. But there's this whole movement trying to pressure politicians into being much more strict with climate change.
Mm-hmm.
It's just getting really old to hear the extreme left come up with a new way how to use a child for their propaganda or their cause.
Well, you know what's funny about that? You know who else used children for propaganda?
Hitler,
Absolutely.
Stalin.
Yeah. I mean, are we really going back to that?
Well,
You know they say history repeats itself.
it does, and it's definitely showing its true colors.
I mean, I blew my mind, man. I was like, and the thing was, this girl came out of nowhere with all of this, and it came down to it when I really was thinking about, when we talked about it. I was like, man, well, and I think that this is probably the biggest thing is she has an illness, right?
Yeah, she's got Asperger's or something.
Yeah. So I mean, not only did they take it to the extreme of using a child, but they're using a child that has an illness. Which I'm not trying to talk ill about ill children,
No.
but I mean, can you imagine just what's gonna happen to this girl? How devastated she's gonna be if it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying.
I mean, I'm all for people being visionaries, absolutely, but just to think that, one, she's not from the United States, but she's going to discussions in the United States about a situation that's worldwide. I mean, what's the point?
Well, because she's probably been told, and it's well known that the United States has probably the most influence in the world. At least that's how it appears.
Yeah.
So if you can get United States on board, then you got the world at your hands. Is probably the thought process. Is what I would think. But yeah, I think she's probably pretty sheltered from a lot of the criticism. I mean, she's commented on Trump mocking her, and even Putin kind of talking condescending about her. But it's just ridiculous that her parents would allow this, because I wouldn't allow my child to be the poster child of a movement like this. So that tells me that there's probably a lot of money involved with this.
Well, there has to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
I also think that this is probably organic. This is probably her real belief, and somebody liked it, and her parents got a lot of high friends who gave her these amazing platforms, and so they've taken her idea, they ran with it, it fits the narrative, so it's perfect. Why not use her? So it's just it's getting old. I think people are tired of it.
oh yeah, I definitely get that, and I mean, it's just there's more pressing matters going on in the world and within the country that could actually be more of a focus than climate change, because honestly, I don't feel that climate change is going to be something that's going to be that greatly, for us at least, in the next 10 years. I give the Earth a lot longer than, what are they saying, 12 years?
AOC said 12 years, but then she said, oh, anybody who believed that and took that literal is an idiot. And so,
But she said it.
Yeah, of course she said it, and she probably believed it at the time. And if she didn't, then that just goes to show you can't trust what these politicians say, especially politicians like her.
Yeah, it's just, I I just don't know, man. Like, where does it stop? That's the real
It
question.
doesn't stop anywhere. I mean, this is all about fear mongering. It's all about saying that, because you just said just a little bit ago, you said there's more important issues that we can focus on. What people like Greta are saying, and there's a bunch of kids on board. I've seen lots of video clips with kids talking about climate change. What they're saying is that this is it. This is the end. If we don't deal with this right now, then we have no future. That's why these kids are saying that they're not going to class, they're not going to school. They're taking the day off to protest. They're making it a now or never situation, but it's all fear mongering. It's all the sky is falling, and people are buying into it. They're panicking, and it's going to cause a chain reaction and other problems.
Yeah, what's the one thing that happens that people constantly talk about when a tragedy occurs is staying calm and not being scared.
Right.
And fear in instilling fear in the people is not going to get it solved. And two, you're scaring people. They're not going to want to help you.
No.
I mean, they're going to be so scared that all they're going to worry about is themselves, because that's natural instinct
Right.
for human beings. So would it be better to take a different approach at it?
No, there's a million different approaches they can take. But again, when you get that panic in people, especially young people, it's now or never, it's my way or the highway. Any other alternative or any compromise is a loss. It's not a win. We need victories. We need aggressive policy right now. But it's like, again, kids, if you feel this way, don't drive a car. Get rid of your phone. I mean, get rid of anything that uses a fossil fuel. So if you have a go-kart, if you have a scooter that takes gas.
A four-wheeler.
Yeah, a four-wheeler. No more. Don't do it. Practice what you preach. Because trying to virtue signal and trying to cause fear in other people and holding a knife up to society's throat, this isn't going to work.
No, it's not. But you got to look at the population too and think about how many people are actually buying into this. It's not going to be people like you and me. It's not going to be our parents.
Right.
It's not going to be our older siblings. It's going to be the people that are in college that are like, oh man, this is terrible. I got to help with this. They're going to get.
Well, again, it's all about being a part of something bigger than yourself. Most people have disregarded any type of religion, especially organized religion. And so they want a purpose in life. They want a cause, and they want to save the world in their own way.
I can give you purpose. Join the military.
Yeah, well, that's not purpose enough for them.
Well, I don't know. That's a whole other subject in itself, man.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you want to be a part of something, and unfortunately, it was like when the Parkland shooting occurred, and all those kids skipped school to go march in D.C. I'm like, bro, if I would have skipped school, my parents would have beat my ass.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, you're not going to march and no march. Like, okay, I get that, but it's not going to accomplish what we're trying or what the goal is for these people want to achieve. I'm not saying that their goal is unachievable. I'm just saying that 100% that they could definitely think of different ways to get the
message out.
Yeah, there you go.
But at the very beginning, you were talking about a lady who stood up and talked to AOC directly, and she was talking about eating babies because there's too many people in the world, so we need to start doing something about this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you see, this seems to be a very underlining point that nobody's really talking about too much, but what this is doing, what this is, this whole climate change, this whole global warming, this whole notion, what this is doing to people is it's turning people even more against humanity than they already are. We need to start eating babies because there's too many people in the world. Well, how much further, how many steps further do you have to take to when you start saying, we need to start killing off some people because there's too many people in this world?
Right.
And that's the fear. Now, again, this is this is worst case scenario of how I view this movement. But when you have a lady talking about eating babies, whether she's kidding or not, it's just the fact of how many steps further until we start talking about killing off old people or killing off maybe people that just don't get on board with this movement who want to take out their four-wheelers or their jet skis or whatever. They want to drive the Hummers. And like, how many more steps forward until we start talking about killing off these people for the betterment of
society,
society, of the world?
I mean, I mean, if you're already at that point where you're talking about eating babies, I don't think there's not very many more steps you're gonna take.
In my opinion, no, there's not.
I mean I mean, you're talking babies, people like life forms that haven't even had a chance to actually experience life yet.
Right.
I mean, like you said, what's the next step? Well, these people have lived for 60 years. They've experienced life. We need to. I mean, where does that actually come?
What use do they have other than eating our food and drinking our water? I mean, these are complete possibilities that this movement could take a really ugly turn.
Absolutely, and it kind of goes back to what we talked about with gun control. It could change things.
I honestly think gun control, a lot of talk about socialism, all this plays into this. I think ultimately it's underneath the umbrella of climate change. Because, climate change is bigger than all of these. Because if you're talking about the world ending because we're ending it, then, I mean, everything else goes into it. Gun control, socialism, all of it.
Yeah, and like we've stated before, legislation may change things, but it may not change it the way you want it to.
No,
it could very easily change things in actually for the worse.
Absolutely, and you gotta think, a lot of the activists that are all for climate change are some of the biggest criticizers of the police. You've seen that the police can't even do their job right a lot of the time. So you're really going to trust the government to fix these things? I mean, the government outlawed drugs a long time ago, and you can still find drugs in just about every high school.
Absolutely. I mean, it's. I don't know how many times when I was in Miami, man, we were walking down the beach and like weed everywhere, just everywhere. And I know that we talked about weed not really being a drug, as much as meth and heroin and things like that. But I mean, it's just because we outlaw it doesn't mean it's going to fix the problem. Or just because we want to put legislation towards it.
Absolutely not. And demonizing people is not the way to do it.
No.
I mean, when the Catholic Church came out and says, people who have sex before marriage are sinners, homosexuals are sinners. Well, what does that do to people? That makes them not like that institution that is preaching this. And so when you get these big entities, these big activists, these big organizations, and these politicians who come out and start basically demonizing humanity or even if it's a 16-year-old Swedish girl who comes out and starts demonizing our society and our people for their choices and their part in global warming, even if it's true, it's not going to get the message across. You can have the truest, most purest message, but if you come out and start demonizing people and pointing your finger at them and having this holier than thou attitude, people aren't going to listen. They're going to shut down.
Yeah. It kind of talks about there's always that meme coming that floats around Facebook every so often comes back up. It says some of the nicest people are covered in tattoos and listen to the craziest music, and some of the most judgmental people go to church every Sunday. And you're right. It's all about the way that we're taught to see these things. And like you said, demonizing people just does not help the situation at all.
No, even if the situation is as true as they say it is. Now, you and me have both stated on this podcast and even off recording that we definitely do see symptoms of climate change. And I agree. I think human beings have played a small role in the changing climate. I truly do believe that. And so some of the things I can agree with that these activists say.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's all about how they go about it.
Yep. I mean, you can have the purest message in the world, like you said, and your delivery can be total trash.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not going to have the same effect, or it's not going to have the effect that you want it to have.
Yep. Another thing is these activists and politicians, they make it sound like that we're going to be able to switch from fossil fuels to alternative, cleaner energy, whether that be wind energy, solar energy, or however they plan on producing this new energy without fossil fuels, that we're going to be able to switch this and not change much in our lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly.
They make it sound like it's going to be a pretty clean change. It's going to take a little effort from everybody, but in the end, it's not gonna affect our lifestyle too much. And you and me, we both know that's complete bullshit.
Well, exactly. How many times has the government tried to get people to conform to their agenda?
Right.
And how many times has it not worked?
I don't know if it ever works, honestly.
That's what I'm saying.
You need other entities. You need Hollywood. You need the fashion industry. You need the music industry to get on board. It takes a lot more than just government.
Well, a good example of that is like during the campaign, when Trump won the campaign back in 2016, right?
Yeah, that was election year.
I'm all sidetracked today, but people hated Trump because their favorite celebrities hated Trump, or they agreed with something because a known public figure agreed with it.
Had it just been CNN spewing hate on Trump, nobody would. I mean, it wouldn't have been as popular to hate
So
Trump.
yeah, like you said, you're gonna have to get other entities involved if you want to make this change.
And the climate change movement has definitely gotten these other entities involved.
Absolutely, and it's not a bad thing. Like I said, I'm not saying that we're wrong and that we can't do anything about it. I'm just saying that we're not going to stop it. We can definitely take measures to help reduce our footprint in it.
Right.
And go ahead.
No, I just want to ask. So, in your opinion, what's a practical way that we as a society could come together or do our part to reduce our footprint, so to speak?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge one of the biggest one thing in the military that we always talk about is reduce, reuse, recycle, right?
Right.
So first of all, there's so much trash in the world right now, and think about manufacturers and for instance, bottled water. How many cases of bottled water are produced a day? I don't have numbers. I'm just throwing this out there. If everybody used a reusable water bottle and drank water from the tap, other than Flint, Michigan,
Yeah. Or China.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's obviously exceptions to this rule.
Right.
But if say 50% of the world population went to reusing the same water bottle over and over again, think about how much waste we would reduce, how much less emissions we'd pump into the air because that'd be those factories using less power, less resources to produce more product.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
So it's one of those things. It's all going to be about having that mentality of how can I reduce the amount of trash. I think honestly, reducing the amount of trash you put out every week, every day, is the first step.
Right.
I think that's going to be the first step in this change that they're looking for, and it's going to come down to, like, honestly, I'll tell you what, if Teslas were affordable, I would drive a Tesla. If I could afford it on my paycheck, I would.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they're nice cars. However, Elon Musk is onto something. But what he did with a car was make something great, but something so unaffordable to the common public that we can't even benefit from it because we can't afford it.
Right.
If they made electric cars, like, let's go back to like the 1960s when your car was we look at them now, we're like, man, this car ain't got nothing, Like, when you look back at that, if they made a base model of the Tesla, something that doesn't drive itself, that doesn't do all the fancy shit that all the expensive ones do, but you could get it for $20,000, I'd go trade my car in, I'd trade my truck in, I'd go get a Tesla.
Yeah.
You know why? Because it's cleaner, and I wouldn't have to pay for fucking gas, dude.
Yeah. Just recharging.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I already pay an electric bill, right?
Right.
I'm ready. I'm basically getting rid of one expense, and basically putting what I'm already putting out and just putting a little bit more onto that.
Right.
Like that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's things like that. Like, we have the capability to do the things that need to be done to help reduce our footprint. We just, for the common public, we can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
It's not feasible right now.
Yeah, and part of that is because of politics. I don't know if you're familiar with the documentary "Who Killed the Electric Car." You ever heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
So basically, and I believe this was either in the later 90s or early 2000s, but there was a handful of electric cars, and they were being tested basically, but they were leased out to people.
Mm-hmm.
People were able to buy it. These were usually people with money, and they drove these electric cars. It's pretty much what the Tesla is now, but this was back then. And people loved it. They loved it, and they wanted to keep it. But since they were leased, at one point they just ripped them all away from everybody without much warning. And people offered, they're like, "Can I buy this car?" And they're like, "No." And a lot of that was because of the industry. It was because it was the industry basically putting pressure on politicians to outlaw this. Like, you're talking about fossil fuel industries.
Well,
So big oil companies.
Yeah, big oil companies.
Yeah, so a lot of that is because of this. Because of big oil companies and lobbyists and things like that have their their foot and their hands in our government. And so what these activists nowadays that are about climate change, they promise to basically put an end to all that. That's what the AOCs promise. But I believe in AOC. I believe all these politicians, as long as there's dollar signs, they will fold their values. They will withdraw their values from what they campaigned on.
Oh, 100. I completely agree with you. I mean, money talks, man.
And that's just government for you.
Yeah, it is just money for you.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody told me that I needed to go walk around naked, but they offered me $4 million to do it, I probably would do it.
Well, you'd at least think about it.
I would at least think about it. Yeah, like it would definitely. Yeah, it would be a really hard pass.
But if I told you, hey Jason, you just need to go walk around naked, you'd be like, fuck you.
Exactly. I'm like, Josh, you're fucking crazy, bro.
You just want to see my dick, bro.
Right? Exactly. Like, it'd be a whole nother story.
Right.
But yeah, dollar signs do speak.
Yeah, they do, and so that's just another problem I see with trying to hand all this power over to the government.
Yeah.
You and me, we just came up with one feasible idea. Limit the amount of trash you put out. I mean, I'd add, ride a bike, walk more. That's something that a lot of people just don't do much, especially with local driving. There's a lot of places you can just walk to.
What are you saying, Josh?
I'm saying that everybody's fat like me, and you need to get your asses out there walking.
Oh, I thought you were saying because I live 2 minutes from work to stop driving my car.
You know what? You do need to stop doing that. but no, I mean, these are ways. The thing is, these cause effort. So you could put an Al Gore, or you could put a 16-year-old Swedish girl in front of the cameras and tell people you need to start doing this. But it comes down to people are lazy. The public's lazy.
Yeah.
Even most of the activists that are about climate change and all this, they're hypocrites and they're lazy and they don't want to do it unless everybody else is doing it. They want to force their life on everybody else, their values on everybody else. Now I recognize there are a lot of people out there that have a very small carbon footprint.
Yeah.
They do ride their bike. They do recycle.
And honestly, I saw a lot of that when I was in Miami. It actually kind of surprised me. They were so where we stayed at in Miami, we stayed off of Collins Avenue, which is literally right on the beach. We got an Airbnb out there. It was really fun. But I was actually surprised to see, and obviously around here in the Midwest we don't see it as often, but how many people didn't even own cars. They just own bikes.
Right.
Literally just rode their bikes or took the bus everywhere.
Right.
Now, we can make a solar bus for city transportation that was reliable, which Elon Musk is a good idea for you if you ever decide to listen to this episode. Start designing a bus from Tesla and make it affordable to cities. And think about the amount of carbon emissions that would eliminate just from city transportation.
And if you do this, we want commission.
But that's just another feasible idea.
Oh, absolutely. I believe they're in the works. I believe there's a lot of companies looking to do stuff like this.
There is not. I mean, we have the technology to do it. Ian was showing me something the other day about. I don't know if you know who Atlas is.
No.
Okay, so we'll do some. I'll show you after we get off the episode. But Atlas is a robot that was designed by Boston Dynamics, I believe. And this is a robot that can literally jump walls, can literally carry boxes, can literally do tuck and rolls. And they started developing this, I think it was 10 years ago. And every year they put out a video of everything that they've upgraded. It's freaking... It was like the video that... Did you watch the podcast with Joe Rogan?
Yeah, and he showed him the...
Yeah, that
the
same
robot.
concept.
Yeah.
Same concept. And so with the technology's there, we just need to find a better way to implement it into our daily lives.
Right, and that's what that's what politicians and activists say. Well, we need to create policy to basically make these things basically force these things into the public. When you and me are basically sitting here, we're talking about it. There's got to be ways to do it without having
trying to force people's hands,
without trying to create a bunch of legislation to do so. I mean, come on, this is America. We have most of us have a capitalist attitude to some degree. Come on, we can do it without the government. We don't need the government's intervention to do so.
You make it affordable, people get on it.
You make it affordable, absolutely. I'll buy one.
Yeah, and that's the thing is just what's been required. And I don't know if you know this, but Tesla actually makes shingles for your house that are actually they look like shingles, but they're actually solar panels. And you can actually buy a Tesla battery. A guy in my unit was actually telling me about this. You can actually buy a battery to store this energy. but you literally cover your house like you do like with shingles.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he said the battery, I think, like the battery to store it was like $4,000, which actually isn't that unaffordable, believe it or not. If it's something you really want to do, you can make it happen.
Absolutely.
I think he said to get his roof done was like $5,000. So you're talking a $9,000 investment to help the what am I thinking here? To help this fuel change.
Right.
So there's definitely that situation where we could where if they made that a little more affordable, more people would be able to do it.
And I think in the future that they're going to try.
But according to these people, we ain't got much of a future left.
Well, and you know what? If it doesn't happen, you got to blame politics and the government and lobbyists for basically stepping in front of that and not making it happen. But that's another one that I hear as an alternative to fossil fuels. I always hear people talk about battery, batteries and making things electric. But what people fail to really understand is that when you make everything electric, or when you make everything run off batteries, there's one key ingredient that you need.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
Lithium.
Lithium. And I don't know if you've ever seen a lithium mine.
No, personally I haven't. I've seen, like, you showed me a picture earlier this week on Facebook,
Right.
or on Google, I mean.
And I encourage anybody who's never seen a lithium mine to Google it just to see what it looks like. They are very, very ugly, and they are very big. And there's a lot of tools that, there's some very big vehicles that go into mining lithium, especially when you're getting it from the ground. But lithium mining is actually, it's about half and half. There's some scientists and some experts that say that it doesn't do much to the environment, but there's another half that say it's very damaging to the water source, because a lot of where you get lithium from is from in desert areas from the water source. You're actually
like mining into the aquifers.
Pretty much something along that line.
That's rough.
From my understanding. And so yeah, it's very it's very dangerous to the water supply in a lot of areas like that. So that's something to keep in mind when people start talking about electricity and battery run things to stop, basically use that as an alternative for fossil fuels. That's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Because, the research into it is not real definitive. It's still being discussed in the scientific community.
Yeah, I mean, you got a point. I think solar obviously is going to be the way of the future, in my opinion.
I've already seen houses that have solar panels on their roof, and so I think you're probably going to see more of that.
There was one of the guys I went to high school with, his dad actually, his house was completely off the grid. He had a well. Everything was solar powered. He had a solar panel farm that he installed himself. He was an electrician. Installed all this stuff. Literally didn't pay for nothing. His house was heated with electric. Everything in there was electric. There was no gas. And so all the electric he had was what he got from the sun.
What about the plumbing?
Well, I mean, the plumbing came from the well.
Right.
So, I mean, other than that, I mean, he didn't pay for water.
Right. But so he didn't have utilities, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he didn't pay utilities.
Right.
And so it's hard. I mean, don't get me wrong, dude. Have you ever looked into putting a well on your property?
No.
Well, first of all, where we live in Nebraska, that's not possible. The farms, yes. Here in town, no. But to put a well in Arizona, it was like $12,000, and you had to get a permit.
I believe it. What does that all install? I mean, what does that all include? What steps do you have to take to put a well on your land?
So you have to file through the county.
Okay.
To get it approved, and then once it's approved, you have to get a hold of a well drilling company that'll come out and do it. And basically, what they do is they pick a spot and they drill down, and normally it's 300 to 400 feet. They got to drill down and they got to pipe it. And then they'll build like a well house, and the well has to have a pump to pump the water out. So, I've seen it take as fast as 30 days. So most of the time, like, so my grandparents got their house built. They put a well in, and that was one of the first things that they got done, because sometimes it takes the longest. Now there was already a well that had been there, so they didn't have to re-drill it. They just had to go file for a permit to get it. And it took them, I think it was like 45 days to get the permit approval. But I've seen it take as long as 6 months to get approval, depending on where you're at. Because in Arizona, we have a lot of mines. We have a lot of copper mines in Arizona. And so you have to come out and get your land surveyed, all that stuff, just to get the permit. And once you get the permit to drill, then you can drill.
Government intervention.
It's crazy, man. It's a process.
Sounds like it.
But I mean, the benefits are phenomenal. You don't pay a water bill, you know. And I mean,
but like you said, like we can't really do that in the city. You know,
No.
especially people in New York City, they can't do things like that.
no. I'm sure that we could that we could find a way to help mitigate that a little bit. Like first of all, why is collecting rainwater illegal?
Yeah, that's definitely interesting.
Like-
and I just learned that.
Like what's the point in that?
Control.
Like it comes from the sky. Who cares? I'll
Well,
go put a big gas tank in my backyard.
Believe me, if the government could put a fence around the sky, they would.
It's just it's mind-boggling. Like we want to talk about climate change, but then they have stupid ass laws like that.
Right.
You know, it doesn't make any sense. Like honestly, like a lot of people outlawed a lot of towns and states outlawed the use of gray water. You know, gray waters, right?
No, I don't.
So gray water's like the water that comes from your washer when it drains.
Oh, okay.
Back in the 60s, 70s, they had gray water tanks. People could actually put gray water tanks in their yard, and they could use that water to water their yard.
So it would like filter out all the disgustingness from your laundry, basically.
No,
No.
all the soap and stuff's still in there.
Oh.
And actually, believe it or not, laundry soap is probably one of the best things to make your grass grow. That's the only thing that made grass grow in Arizona. Where our gray water came out, had the most luscious green grass in our entire yard, and it was probably like a 5-foot patch, and that was it.
Yeah. Take note, all you people that are very prideful about your front yard.
So, I mean, if we instituted things like that, we wouldn't have to waste water to water lawns. We could literally reutilize the water that we have. I just saw a really cool thing in Japan. They have a toilet that literally has a sink built in on top of the tank. So when you're done, you wash your hands. That water runs into the tank and is used for the next flush. We need to incorporate things like that here
Yeah.
to accomplish what they're talking about accomplishing. That's the kind of stuff we need to incorporate.
It's not a bad idea.
I mean, it seems ridiculous. I mean, I read it means to just pee in the sink because you got to wash your hands anyways, right?
All right.
I mean, it's not completely unlogical.
No, it's not.
I mean, it makes sense.
It
Believe it or
does.
not, it like to us, we're like, what the like really? Pee in the sink? But I mean, you're gonna wash your hands with soap anyways, right? So you're gonna clean the sink right when you're done. Why even have a toilet in your bathroom?
That's right. Don't you judge me. You don't clean your sink.
I'm just saying, like,
No, you're not wrong.
Like it's things like that. Like it seems completely unorthodox.
Right.
But when you sit and you actually like start thinking about like how it could actually change things,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of actually almost genius
Yeah. No.
just to make simple things like that.
There's
but
all those
I don't-
little hacks, man.
I just don't know if I could stand peeing in the sink though. That's a little and for females that's not really a viable. I mean,
They're gonna have to do some climbing and some real squatting.
but yeah. So I mean, it's there's so many different like little things that we can do on a daily basis, and it's not hard. It's just making that little bit of a change.
Right, and it's all about personal choice, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I get if people don't want to make this change. I get it. It's selfish, and I know it makes you activists cringe, and it makes you guys very angry that there's some very selfish people out there that want to ride their four-wheelers. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's their choice. And, you know, you can't just start talking about going and killing these people for the betterment of the world.
Yep.
That makes you evil. You are not a good person if you start talking that way.
Yeah.
No.
She even had this lady even had a T-shirt made.
For the eating babies.
Yeah,
lady.
I'm not even kidding you. She's like, she takes off her sweater. She's like, this should be your campaign slogan, and shows it to AOC, and AOC's just like,
Listen, lady, I'm radical, but I ain't that radical.
here's the crazy part.
On camera, anyway.
No, this was on C-SPAN.
Right.
C-SPAN, bro.
Dude,
Like-
C-SPAN's goofy.
Like, oh my god, dude. You know how many people? Oh, dude.